Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diverse Goddess. It's Hannah, and in today's video, I am going to go over and talk about physical beauty. And in the first part of the video, I'm going to talk about my own experience with beauty, and then in the second part of the video, I am going to talk about the spiritual aspects of beauty. So keep watching. So yes, let's talk about beauty. And of course, there's a lot that can be talked about, but we can all pretty much agree that we live in a world that bases a lot of things on outward appearance, which includes physical beauty, and it's usually women that get bombarded with this or dominated by this. And I am going to be talking about my experience with beauty, and as a woman, since it's usually women, like I said, that this affects the most. So in talking about my experience, I can talk a little bit about first my upbringing, I guess you could say. And I think I mentioned in another video that I was raised in Maine, and but I wasn't born there. I was actually born in India, and I was adopted, and I came to the US when I was 3 and was raised in Maine thereafter. And both my parents are white or Caucasian, and Maine is a very white state. And not that race was ever that big of an issue per se growing up, but it definitely was a little bit of a factor, but not a huge one. And when I was younger, I didn't think too much about outward appearances. For the most part, I didn't necessarily find myself attractive, but I didn't necessarily find myself ugly either. Like, I was fine to be me, and I was happy enough to be me. And in regards to race, I never cared about that either. I was pretty much content. And just a little side note, every human being is born liking how they look. It's just society that we live in tells them otherwise. And I can vouch for that, because when I was a child, I didn't care. I was happy enough how I looked. I was happy with how other people looked. It wasn't an issue. And it was probably around, pre-teens, when I was in 4th and 5th grade. I went through a little bit of an awkward stage, as I think most little girls can. And I can remember my first experience with understanding of beauty. I was in 5th grade, and I'm not going to use anybody's real name, but my best friend at the time, we'll call her Sarah. I was staying over at her house one weekend, and we went to one of her mom's friend's house, and we were both in the bathroom combing her hair or whatnot, and the topic of beauty came up, and I think I asked Sarah, like, if she thought she was pretty, and she nodded her head yes. And then I think I asked her if she thought that I was pretty, and she basically nodded her head no and said I wasn't. And at the time, in all honesty, it didn't really upset me as some might think it would, just because, again, I didn't have a lot of attachment or importance based on physical beauty. So I was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's just how she feels. And maybe it was around 6th grade then, around junior high time, I guess maybe I started to grow into myself or my looks, if you will. And again, I remember being at my friend Sarah's house, and she pretty much said, she looked at me one night or something, and she's like, oh, you're very pretty. And I was like, really? Because I was like, a year ago, you basically said that I was ugly. And she was like, I don't know what happened, but you're very pretty. I remember that kind of stuck out to me when I was younger. And around my later teens, around senior year to college years, I actually became a little bit ashamed to even look pretty or beautiful. And I tended to wear a lot of baggy clothes for the very purpose of trying to hide myself. And I was trying to hide myself for other reasons too, but one of them was that I was trying to downplay any form of being pretty or beautiful, because for some reason I felt ashamed of that. And now beauty comes in different forms and is different for everybody. Everybody has different preferences. But I guess you could say around junior high to high school time and throughout my life, I have been considered beautiful, which I have accepted. But my experience might not be what people might assume. And some of the assumptions that people assume, that if someone is physically attractive, especially in a woman, is that she's either going to be snobby and bitchy, or that she has everything handed to her and life is easy. And so people will either treat you nicely because of it, or they will treat you the opposite because they look at you and they're like, oh, well, everybody treats you nicely, but I'm not going to treat you nicely. And so there is a lot of contradicting reactions that people give you if people find you physically attractive. Now, I can't speak for all women, but I'm sure that I can speak for a lot of women that have been put into this category of being physically beautiful or attractive. And one of the biggest things that I find, not even in myself, but other women as well, that they feel is that they're not really looked at as human. Like, if people consider you beautiful, it's almost like they think that you're not allowed to have any feelings, or nothing bad could ever have happened to you. And if you do try to talk about struggles of life or anything like that, people just look at you like, who cares? And take, for example, Victoria's Secret models. People are okay for models to be that beautiful as long as they don't talk, have an opinion, or share anything serious, because again, people don't look at them as human. And they can accept them as being modeled because that's a safe place to put them. And it is true that a lot of people, they don't want to hear about pretty girl problems. But it is a problem, because this idea that if you're attractive, that you're exempt from being human is ridiculous. And I can also say that I have had struggles and issues sometimes making friends with females because of appearances. I've never had issues making friends with female women that are secure with themselves. I actually have great relationships with women that are very secure. But the ones that aren't, I can tell you the struggle is real. And some of the things that some women have told me to my face in my life is that if I'm an attractive person, which they found me to be, I'm not allowed to have an opinion about beauty. I'm not allowed to have an opinion about struggles in life. And I've even had some women tell me that they flat out will not and cannot be friends with me because they found me too pretty. And the other thing is that people expect you to either be bitchy, snobby, stuck up, or mean. And if you're not, sometimes I've had people get pissed off because I'm not bitchy. And then I've also had people that, let's say you have a human moment, and I've seen this too in my own observation with beautiful women, and people have approached them, and let's say they come off a bit bitchy or guarded, and for whatever reason people don't allow them to be human because they, for some reason, feel owed something by them. And what I mean by human is, let's say a woman is guarded, a beautiful woman. You don't know what that woman has been through in her life. I mean, so many beautiful women that I've known have either been raped in their life, gang raped, have been taken advantage of, just like any other human being that would cause them to become guarded, just like any other human being that would become guarded if they went through the same things in life. But people would be more understanding of someone else that they found less attractive and allow them to be more human than they would somebody who is so-called physically beautiful. But people don't consider those factors when thinking about beautiful, attractive women. They forget those aspects, and they forget to allow everyone to be human. And another experience that I want to share, which happened a few years back in 2017, I had attended an event that had a panel of 4 women, and all the women were sharing different things that they were doing in life and their experiences in life. And this one woman who happened to be overweight, and she was a woman of color, and she was sharing her experience of what it felt like to be dating as an overweight woman of color today. And she got a lot of positive feedback. And one of the things that she really wanted people to understand was how she felt from all the judgment and dirty looks that she gets from people, because she wanted people to remember that she was also a human being that needed love. And of course, that resonated with a lot of people in the audience, including myself. And no, I have never had experience of what it's like to be overweight. But I do know what it feels like to be judged harshly and treated differently because of looks. and sometimes positively and sometimes negatively. But I remember at the end of the night, I was sitting on a bench, and I guess her bag happened to be next to me because she came over to get her bag. And I was about to tell this woman how much I loved what she talked about, and I was so happy and proud of her for sharing her experience and that she was an amazing woman. And she gave me the dirtiest look when she took her bag, and then she walked off aggressively. And so I was kind of like, okay, that was a little weird. So that was an experience. But ironically, the very next day or very next evening, I went to another event, which she happened to also be at. And she was sitting by herself for most of the night, and I noticed her, and she noticed me, and I do feel she remembered me. And I got a few of my friends, and I walked over, and I introduced her to my friends, and I told them how, she was the one who spoke on the panel the other night, and how she was an amazing woman. And she kind of looked at me with a little bit of a red face, kind of embarrassed, I guess you could say, but she ended up smiling at me, and we ended up exchanging an understanding, because in that moment she understood that we had more in common than she realized. Because in truth, no matter what you look like on the outside, no one is exempt from the human experience. Now I want to shift gears and now talk about beauty from a spiritual standpoint. Now, women, or the feminine, is usually deemed to possess elements of beauty, which is true. Women are beautiful. Everyone looks at beautiful women. That's just a fact. And even if a man is beautiful, he will have something of the feminine in him. Not that he has to look feminine or he acts feminine, but there is an element quality, because beauty is associated with the feminine. But I'm talking to mostly women in general. And yes, women are beautiful, but it doesn't have to be seen as something bad or negative. And there is a reason why women possess elements of beauty. And in order to understand why women possess elements of beauty, I first want to talk about nature. If you've ever been out in nature and something has caught your eye, whether it be a beautiful tree, a beautiful flower, perhaps it's a beautiful sunset that you feel magnetically pulled to, and something that just captivates your attention, it pulls you in. And it pulls you in because beauty demands your attention. It commands your attention. And why does it want to pull you in? Much like nature, when nature pulls you in, it's because there's something nature wants to share with you. And it's something of the divine that it wants to share with you, and to remind you that you are a part of nature and just as much of nature. And women, much like nature, there's a reason why they call it Mother Nature. And I did do a whole video on why we call it Mother Nature, and you can check that out if you like. But beauty is intended to pull you in, to captivate your attention for a reason, because it has something to share. So don't think that a woman's beauty is intended so men can lust after her, just so men can feel attraction and use her as a plaything. That is not the intentions of nature. Women are beautiful because, much like nature, which is a consciousness, because nature is a consciousness, women were the voice of consciousness. They were the original voice of consciousness. Women bring the unseen into this world. Women bring the divine into this world. Much like she brings a child into this world, a baby, she creates life. And even when a woman gives birth, who does the baby listen to first? The mother, because the woman was the original voice of consciousness. And because women have been so suppressed over centuries and stifled, a lot of that energy has been kept from coming into this planet, onto this earth. And so when we stifle women, we're actually making the world more ugly. And we have to unsuppress that. Even myself, when I was in my later teens, where I felt like I had to hide my beauty or hide aspects of myself because I felt ashamed of it. If you look in nature, no flower ever hides themselves, no tree, no sunset. It celebrates its beauty. So women have to remember to celebrate themselves and to celebrate other women. And one thing that women do have to relearn is how to appreciate another woman's beauty without feeling jealous or without feeling competitive. And for example, let's say a woman is dating a guy and he looks at a woman that's beautiful. And all of a sudden, the woman starts to feel angry or jealous or insecure. Most men, if they are a decent guy and not an asshole, are just gonna look, but they're not gonna do anything. So there's no reason to feel threatened. Looking at a beautiful woman for a guy is like admiring a beautiful garden. I've even been with guys where I actually want them to sometimes point out beautiful women because I want to look at beautiful women too, and I want to admire it with them like I would a beautiful sunset or a beautiful painting. There doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be sinful or seen as something ugly and bad because there are other beautiful women walking around in the world. And you should be happy if a guy finds another woman attractive because that means he finds you attractive. And finding someone else attractive doesn't take away from your own attractiveness, and it doesn't mean that you're gonna lose the guy. The same thing with women. You might find your guy attractive, but that doesn't mean you're not going to find other guys attractive. And in truth, attractiveness can only go as far as the energy of the person. If the person happens to be physically attractive on the outside, but is not a very nice person, all of a sudden they become less attractive because that's the energy of the person. And let's say if somebody who may not have the standard physical features or attractiveness, but their energy says something different, their energy speaks of beauty and attractiveness, all of a sudden that person does become very attractive. And physical beauty is just a packaging. What really comes off of a person is their light and their energy. And that is what pulls people in. And that is what attraction means. It's to be pulled in because you're drawn to the energy. And like I've said before, attractiveness varies for different people. So what people find attractive is based on their preferences. Now, women have been put under a lot of pressure to be physically beautiful. And I do want to talk a little bit about plastic surgery. Because yes, women use makeup and other things to try to be more attractive. And again, it's not to be judged, but I do want to talk a little bit about plastic surgery, and I'm not here to judge anybody if they've had plastic surgery or want to do it. But what happens when you cut into the human body? You cut into the person's energy fields. You cut into their chakras, you cut into their meridians, and you rearrange them. So you're literally rearranging the energy field of a person. And also, one other thing about breast implants. Again, I'm not here to judge anybody who's had breast implants or wants to have them. But again, you're putting something plastic into your body, and the female body is intended to feed a baby. And unless you don't plan on having a baby or you've already breastfed and then you want to do breast implants, that's fine. But even if you're putting something plastic into your body, it's no different than throwing plastic into the ocean and assuming that there's no harm being done. You are harming your body when you put plastic into it. So anyway, so whatever someone wants to do to their body is their choice, but just know that there are consequences to it. But also, women go to these extreme lengths to become physically beautiful because there's so much pressure put on women for this that it almost becomes their identity. And then women are also told that they lose their beauty as they get older. And so if they have an attachment to their beauty and then they feel they're going to lose it when they get older, there's a lot of women that come to a certain type of crisis later in life because they don't know who they are outside of their physical appearance. Now, that is something very awful to brainwash women into believing because in truth, you can never really lose real beauty. If someone feels that you lost your beauty as you got older, it has nothing to do with you as the person. It has to do with the viewer. They're the ones who changed, and they probably never saw your real beauty in the first place. Because in truth, if you are truly a beautiful person, You can never lose something that is always with you. In women, or the feminine never does lose their beauty. Beauty of women goes through phases, much like a sunrise to a sunset. It's a phase. And you can't say that one phase is more beautiful than another. It's just different. When a woman is younger, she's in her sunrise phase. She's becoming, she's awakening. And then when a woman is in her later part of her life, she's in her sunset phase, which is she's becoming more relaxed. She's becoming more at rest and at ease. But that's not dying. When the sun rises, it means a new day is being born. And when the sun is setting, it means the daytime is dying, but a new energy is being born. And that is the phases of women. When women are younger, they have one energy to them, and when they get older, they have another energy to them. But both phases are equally beautiful, and both should be embraced and celebrated. So let's all try to be a little bit more mindful and a little less judgmental, and understand and try to see the beauty in everyone. So on that note, I'm going to end today's video, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. And if you want to stay more connected with me, you can find me on Instagram at Hannah Rokes. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!